Welcome, everybody, to the CFFLists Waiver Watch Draft for Week 12, the finals edition for our guests, actually, who you do not see here with us, but don't worry, we did do a draft last night. We'll be revealing all of those picks here shortly for what, for many, is the first week of the playoffs. If you're in leagues that take 6 teams, but you might still be in leagues that have a 12-team format that are actually doing it the right way and only take 4 teams to the playoffs. No reason for half the teams to be in there, in my opinion. If you've got a 12-team league, don't see why you would have 6 teams in the playoffs, but some of you guys do that. But that means there's still teams with at least 1 week of the season left. And whether you're in the playoffs or battling for a playoff spot this week, we've got 4 groups of picks here between my partner Willie B and myself, and Justice from the G5 Hive, and Farnsworth from the Ankle Biters Podcast, our 2 finalists who, again, you're not seeing here because of how we had to do the picks. But nonetheless, Willie, we got it done. And I forgot to ask, how are you?
Okay, made it to another Monday, so all's good.
All's good. All right. Well, all is good as far as your picks again. How many weeks over 100 have you had this week? I'm looking at another one here where you had 111. While you look that up, Justice, let's give him his props. Justice from the G5 Hive, round of applause to you. Finished with 127.5, which it doesn't quite make the top 10 all time, but does sneak him in at the 11th best performance of all time. So for those who say it's impossible to get these high scores late in the season because all the good guys are taken, Justice has proven that wrong, as have we, Willie and myself, the last couple of weeks with several rounds over 100 points. Willie got 111 this week. I hit 94. We all exceeded the goal of 90 that we're always shooting for a good performance, which, again, comes from 20 from the QBs. We're looking for 20 at least, looking to give you running backs and receivers that'll get you 15, and tight ends that can get you 10 and up, which yeah, by the way, Willie, you got over 10 on the tight end, which we'll come back to. I think I'd ask you another question before that. How many weeks over 100 have you had this week? I mean, this season?
This year, 4.
Yeah, 4. And this is the college football season, week 11, that we're doing a recap of. We didn't do week 1. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 4 out of 10. Nearly half of Willie's scores have been over 100. Phenomenal job. And as I just mentioned, you even had a tight end that got you over the 5 points or 4 points that you were hoping to get, since tight end has been your worst all year, right?
Yeah, I was really wanting, like I said, I think I really wanted 3.
Yeah,
I mean, it's been that bad.
Right, you'd settle for 3, you said. We'll go through your team, kind of go backwards here. We'll go through your team and my team, and then we'll talk about Justice's top 11 team of all time. But, yeah, you knocked it out of the park here with Winfield. He's rostered in 20% of the teams for the Raging Cajuns. Yeah, he debuted a few weeks ago against Marshall, had a phenomenal game that we weren't sure if, was a fluke or not. He's certainly proven that wasn't a fluke. I don't know how many games he's had over, 30 points in these last 4 weeks, but I know based on what he's done now, I don't think he's available anymore, right? He was over 30% this week. People are not going to probably be able to grab him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he was. I don't have his. I don't have it right in front of me for him, only because he was gone.
Right, and they're also on a bye this week, so it wouldn't matter even if he was for
there you go.
This week.
That's probably what it was then, for sure.
But I'm sure he's right up around 30, if not over 30.
He's at 41, actually.
Yeah, so he jumped last week from 20 to 41. Again, more proof that it makes no sense that it took Minicucci that long, when you've got guys like this that jump 21% in 1 week, and then Minicucci just dragged along to even get over 30 all season long until last year. But he had a really good pick there with the Louisiana Tech new RB1 there, Clay Thevenin. I think he's a freshman, if I'm not mistaken. Can't remember if he's redshirt or not. Still at 2%. Zylan Perry was really your only faulty pick, 7.8. Ended up being, I think, more of a shootout where they had to rely on the passing game more. Then Parker Kingston nearly got you double digits, 9.9. We'll round that up, call it 10. So we've got the super light green on him. You still got your double digits. And then one of the more consistent guys for the season, who, like his quarterback, has been kind of grossly underestimated. Kyrie Duplessis with 19.8, and then you had your tight end with 13.6. So great job there. Anything you'd like to comment on your own team there? I mean, you did a great job.
Duplessis should not be available, even though he still is.
Right. Yeah.
That's
He's available going into this week, so we'll let you know
yeah.
if any of us grabbed him. It's really crazy how the stigma that people had against the FBS's newest team here with Delaware. I really think it's just the fact that it's the fear of the unexpected, but even after 7 or 8 weeks, like we said last week, like you would think that the fear of taking one of these Delaware guys would have subsided because they've proven they're really consistent between Duplessis and Minicucci. Going to my side, J.C. French. A few of us have been eyeballing him and putting him on this list. I think he's been on here 3 weeks in a row now, and didn't fail again. He had 25.9 against App State. My low running back was kind of similar to your Parker Kingston at receiver. You had 10 from him. I had 10.9 from Chavez Soto. Didn't get a ton of carries, but has, again, really proven to be the goal line guy for San Jose State. When they love to use him down at the goal line, so there's a good chance he's still going to get in the end zone, even if he's not getting a ton of carries. Dior Hubbard, I was really happy with. He's the new RB1 there at West Virginia. They've had to shuffle him around due to injury, but he's kind of the last man standing, and he's doing the job. He was a 2% guy, 21.8. Amari Thomas, I think this was the last week any of us could take him. He's been really consistent the last several weeks as well for Houston. My big miss, and I guess they're just spreading it around, picking and choosing who they want to go to based on who Byron Brown finds open. Jeremiah Koger. It just seems to, they're being smart and they're spreading it around. So in real life, it makes sense, but for fantasy, making it a little tough here for us trying to find some hidden gems there at USF. He only got 3.8 and disappeared on me. But then, nice performance by Juice Vereen, the former NC State tight end who's made his way to UConn. Got me 10.5. So we had 2 out of 3. How about that, Willie? 2 out of 3 tight ends over double digits this week. And we haven't had that often this season, right?
Right. Yeah. Hamlet was the one that was a little surprising for me, but yeah, really good on that. And Dior Hubbard, you actually kind of, I guess I just kind of gave him to you because um, I guess I had 2 sheets going, and one I had last minute did not have Hubbard on it because I remember it, and I think I had said, well, I was trying to save him. I really wasn't trying to save him. I found it later,
You know
and
what?
yeah, so it should have been Hubbard instead of Perry for me, but that was a good pick by you.
And that's really interesting you said that because, as we've mentioned, our guests aren't live with us today. We did do the draft last night. We're going to go through all of those picks. The exact same thing happened for me with one of your picks this week. I had cut and paste some players from last week and moved them up to this week's notes, and I left a player out that I had updated in the notes and let you get a guy that I wanted this week, and I'll mention him when we get to him. But the
Wow.
exact same thing happened to me this week. So there's your fair trade. I let you grab a guy this week that I would have taken ahead of you if he was there. But again, we'll touch on that. Let's run through Justice's picks. Again, I wish he was here live to give him his props. He's had a phenomenal season. What do you can you check? What do you have in the rounds leading up to this? Does this give him his third game over 100, or at least 2 out of 3 over 100 for him, right?
Looking, yeah, let me scroll down to that. He had, yeah, his week 3 performance, he had 115.2,
Right.
which
Okay.
was second for our guest pickers, right behind Farnsworth, who, in week 7, he had his 125.1. So
Correct.
the guys in the,
Yeah. 2
yeah,
weeks.
so
He's two
yeah,
for 2 with 115 and now 127. So he's proven his knowledge, and he mentioned last week, he's been doing this thing for almost 25 years, or maybe he said 26. So, no surprise there. And they get the extra insight on the G5 guys, and I'm looking every guy on his roster. He lived up to the G5 Hive moniker. Every single guy on his team was a G5 guy, as was yours. Now that I'm looking, which no, BYU, you had one Big 12 guy, and I had a Houston guy. So we had a couple of Big 12 guys along with the G5. But anyways, his quarterback out. Well, no, he is Collier, I think they say, Samari Collier, had a huge one. Didn't quite match Winfield. He had 35-1. Your guy Winfield had 36-6. But what's amazing is, you know, his 5 picks kind of replicated what I did last year or last week in a way. He had 4 of his 5 picks that actually scored had over 21 points. His low man was Evan Dickens from Liberty, who only had 18-7, which I'm sure a lot of people would have been happy to take. We were saying we were surprised though. We're not sure if he got hurt or what happened, but he had the nice we thought he had the nice find with Hamlet at tight end since Cummings was hurt at App State. He didn't have any targets or any catches, so I had you look it up and see if he had any snaps, and you discovered he had 10 snaps, but that was it compared to like 40 or something the week before. So we're
Right.
not sure if he got hurt. I wish Justice was here to maybe let us know. He might, have some insight there, but it's just been difficult to find out what happened because now a third tight end has emerged there at App State, and we're not sure what happened. But that said, my point is he got 127 and a half, even getting a zero, for totally unexpected reasons. Like I said, Hamlet might have been hurt and only played 10 plays, is kind of what I'm going to guess. But, he had the guy your quarterback was throwing to. He had Shelton Sampson, who's back from injury and doing really well these last few weeks with 25. Jordan Hudson for SMU had 21-4. And then the surprise to me was Jordan Gant. He had not been that consistent this season and busted out with the 27-3, which Justice, felt really good about going into this game based on the matchup against UMass, and he called that one correctly. So, Gant, again, wasn't on my radar when he picked him last week because of some inconsistent outputs, but ended up being his second highest scorer for Akron. But all in all, that was enough to get him to the finals. Any final comments on last week before we get into a recap of last night's draft picks that we all had?
No, I mean, Gant was on my radar. It's just that he hasn't been hitting the end zone, but he did twice this week, which, that, like I said, those are when you need to have it, and Justice got it. I mean, I liked all the picks, to be honest. And it's a shame, what happened to Hamlet, but
Yeah,
he's still in the final, so that's all that matters.
yeah, and all right, yeah, I had a brain lapse there. I was going to make one comment, but all right, maybe that's a sign that I didn't need to make it. We can just get on to to the picks. Um, but yeah, so you see a little something different here. Like we've mentioned, we're missing our guests, but it doesn't mean they weren't involved. We wanted to have a finals no matter what. Um, it was actually my schedule that kept us from having a decent recording time, so we're doing this on Monday morning rather than the usual Sunday recording. All the picks are here. We've covered them up with some blocks here. We're going to reveal them one at a time by position. So Farnsworth had the 1.1 pick, Willie. So I will slide over here and reveal that pick. And again, this is not in the order they were picked. We'll talk about where he grabbed him. His tight end was Randy Pittman, and by this point, um, we had all got to the end of our picks. I think we had all made a couple of picks because we were able to since certain positions were filled. If I'm not mistaken, Pittman was his last pick, maybe the last pick of the draft. Really, is that right, or his
Yeah, I had
second
him
to
at
last?
20. Yeah, I had him 24, so yeah, should be the last pick.
Yeah, and I had stopped counting by round here because we were kind of all throwing out our last picks. But I can't be mad at it. Looking, Farnsworth, I did know. I'll give this away. He did have a few guys right at the cusp of eligibility. This is one of 2 guys I will reveal that he had that are 29% rostered. So he was going for the win, is what that tells me. He's not playing around and trying to, make exceptions and pick guys that are rostered under 10% to make it, helpful for the viewing audience here. He's wanting to win the finals. He went for a couple of guys that are as heavily rostered as you can be in this competition. They've got to be under 30. Pittman is 29. I wasn't going to take him this week. I will say that because he's been a little inconsistent. His last 4 games, he's had 17, 5, 12, and then 7. So a little bit up and down. But what I'm thinking, I'm trying to read into Farnsworth's mind here because we did do a text draft. We didn't get to hear all of his thoughts. You and I are big on kind of joking about patterns. And if you're looking at the pattern, we go last 4 weeks, double digit, single digit, double digit, single digit. So maybe Farnsworth's looking at the pattern and saying, you know what? He hasn't been super consistent, but this is his double-digit week going against Virginia Tech, who is ranked 131st against tight ends. What do you think, Willie?
Yeah, I think it's more importantly that Virginia Tech defense, but yeah, I agree with the patterns.
Yep.
But looking at it, I mean, there's still one guy on the list I probably would have taken, but I can't disagree with the pattern. So he should be in for double digit points. And that's if he's healthy, because he has been one of those that all of a sudden he's picked up this injury and then he doesn't play. So I hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, he came back from the injury, had a couple good weeks, then he got hurt again, and I know I had him back when that was happening in the waiver draft, I believe, early on. But nonetheless, like you said, great matchup. If you believe in patterns, this is the week he's going to get double digits again. Can't knock it. Just wasn't initially on my radar, is all I'll say there. But I still don't think it's a bad pick in hindsight. Um, with that, we'll let you know who I thought was a better pick and actually took as the first tight end off the board, and that's Dylan Wade from UCF. Happens to be, by the way, Randy Pittman's old home. So, Pittman moved from UCF to FSU. Dylan Wade moved from Maryland to UCF. And I have him in the Sickos League, so I was on him early thinking he'd have a good surprise season. Hasn't been as good as I thought it was. He's only averaging 8.1 points a game. But what I like about him, you hear me say things like this all week, is don't worry about the season average of 8.1. Look at his last 3 or 4 weeks where he's had 10.5, one slightly low there, 6.3, 8.4, and 14. The other thing we talk about with tight ends, he's gotten all of those points with no tight ends, which is, 3 games at 8.4 points or more in the last 4. So he's due for a touchdown. I'm not saying he's going to go get one. He is playing against Texas Tech, a tough team, but teams have had success with tight ends. They're 124th in terms of giving up points to fantasy tight ends. So there's an opportunity here for Wade to keep it going. He's averaging, eyeballing it here, about 10 or 11 points in the last 4 weeks. So he's a guy completely capable of getting you double digits or at least 8 points, even if he doesn't reach the end zone. So I think it's a nice safe pick and one that you can grab at 4% rostered.
Yeah, that was nice. That was a nice pick. I mean, I was a little surprised that you went tight end that early. You got him at the 13 spot,
Yep.
but yeah, he was second on my list. So I can see why you did that.
Yeah, and for me, again, we kind of want to give you the feel of how things were flowing. I didn't have a lot of tight ends. I had a lot of, hope in this week. I had him and one other who was taken, so I won't mention him yet. But I wanted to make sure I grabbed the first tight end this week because I really only liked 2, and I thought Wade was one step above based on the matchup. So I went first off the board because I had a lot of quarterbacks. I'll say that too. So I wasn't rushing to get a quarterback. So I think I jumped in there after I got a receiver and a running back and got him. So now let's reveal your pick. I'll let you do all the talking here. Here's who you got.
Yeah, so I got him. I got Kyrian Heath late, number 22, only because he's 1% roster. That's one other thing I like. And then of course, they get the Texas State matchup, who has given up 20 passing touchdowns. They give up 240 through the air. And let's see, what do you have him pulled up? If not, I'll do that. Let's see. What is just trying to see what Fantrax has him. They're 133rd
You're
against the tight end
against tight
position.
end.
So yes, so um, he was been on my radar. So last 2 weeks especially, he had 10.4 and then he had 16.1. So and he scored the last 2 games also.
Right.
And I just need some consistency here. Like I said, really just want the 3 points, but I'll gladly take double digits, which is what he's been doing the last few weeks. So
Yeah. My note on him, I didn't have him on my list. I was happy to see you take him. He's been getting used by Southern Miss at this point of the season, like I thought he was going to be used all year, but it turns out he was another guy that was banged up early. Super athletic tight end that there was a lot of hype about. He was one of the few holdovers that stayed at Southern Miss when Coach Huff went over there. Um, so a lot of the talk was like nobody knew who the running backs were going to be, who the receivers were going to be, but they were sure that the good tight end was going to be Heath, and he was going to be used a lot more. It just didn't happen early in the season because of the injury, but it looks like he's in exactly the form they wanted him to be in to utilize him as a big part of their game plan as they push to get to the Sun Belt title, which Coach Huff would be in back-to-back now if he can get Southern Miss there. But yeah, nice little sneaky pickup there, especially at 1%. So I'm going to co-sign that one for you too, Willie.
yeah, I mean 6'5", 240. I mean he does have that big playability. He had that one big catch 2 weeks ago. 34 for his only reception, but it was a touchdown. But then he, came back with another 55 yards receiving. So I just think that I like what Southern Miss is doing. I can tell you that. So
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what his buyout is, but I have a sneaky suspicion Coach Huff will fill one of the big Power Four voids that's out there. Don't you?
okay, I think
I
he
mean,
should. I mean,
after he did what he did at Marshall, and now what he's
yes,
doing in one single season at Southern Miss, that's a complete turnaround in less than
absolutely.
a season at Southern Miss. So,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
now in an age
and
where you can bring your best players with you wherever he goes.
exactly. I mean, we all know they have quite a few Marshall players there, but for it to just get changed and turned around like that, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, they've been pretty bad the last couple of years. Justice's tight end is the guy that I had last week, Juice Farine, who the theme here is guys who have all four really come along midseason and later. Because again, he's a name people knew from NC State who essentially was transferring down, so we thought he'd have a good season. Really wasn't, you know, putting up eye popping numbers or anything early on. But talk about the last four that you want to see. His last four: 24 points, 12 points, 11 points, and 14.6. But he's only averaging 8.2 in the season, so that shows you how low the numbers were in the front half. But he's had no game lower than 11 in the last four. No doubt about it. Good pick here. This was the other one I mentioned that I would have taken if I couldn't get my hands on Dylan Wade. The only reason I gave Wade the advantage is I'm kind of trusting Fantrax here. Air Force has not given up many points to tight ends. They're 16th. That might be because teams just haven't had to use them. They're doing other things against Air Force, but it seems that Air Force has been shutting down tight ends. I don't think that's going to happen here. I think Vereen gets at least his eight points and probably double digits again. What do you think about Justice's pick here, Willie? And he
No, I
took
really
him, by the
like
way.
it.
He took him two picks after I took Wade, so maybe he was thinking sort of what I was. Is he didn't have too many that he wanted to go with because he took him as his I think fourth player when he still had three slots open. But what sorry
Right.
to cut you off.
And yeah, I probably wouldn't have taken him that early, even though you took Wade, but Vereen was the number one tight end on my list, so I can
Gotcha.
understand why he was taken. And hold on a second, J Mel. I'm trying to make sure that that's right.
What's right?
That you have that pick correct. Is that right? Randy Pittman.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
maybe I did write it down wrong. Yeah, you're correct.
Okay.
I wrote that down wrong.
Okay. All right. Good. All right. Glad we didn't mess up on
Yes,
the
exactly.
tech
I
job.
wouldn't want to short
All right.
justice. Yeah.
Yeah. Not that we're going in order, but we did do a snake here at the end. Justice went fourth, and he got double picks. Let's just reveal his first receiver since we're going that way, and we're over
All right.
here. Um, Cameron Dorner, have to say, another guy. We talked before we started recording. Between Farnsworth and Justice, there was maybe 4 to 6 guys I think that I didn't have on my list. You said something, similar in that regard. But yeah, Dorner's one that I didn't have. Did you? Did you have him there?
Yeah. Now he didn't make my list this week, but he has been on my radar. The thing is, North Texas, they have so many weapons. I just don't want to take chances. Even in my own league. So I want someone who's going to get double digit targets at this point, if you can manage that. But obviously, if you can't, then especially with these bye weeks, you just have to take the chance. So I get it and I understand why he did it. So
Yeah, and
it's
he
a
changed it.
decent.
Right. Decent matchup, UAB 74th against receivers. But you're right. It's very similar to South Florida there. When you're picking a North Texas receiver, it's kind of like throwing darts there. Which one's going to be the guy? But it's kind of that's what's worked for him in real life. His last 4 weeks, he's had 2 games at 17 plus and 2 games at 12 and 11. So I guess you could say the good thing is he should at least get you 10 or 11, which isn't bad. But your chances of getting to the 15 mark and above, which is what we're shooting for, might be a little slimmer. But he will get you more consistent points if you're just needing a guy, to plug a hole, and you don't want to get something below 10. This should be a guy to help you out there. Yeah. So because let's see, his previous 4 games before these last 4 that were all over 11 were all under 8 points. So I think that's what you were saying, right, Willie? Is he just hasn't had that consistency, but his targets have seemed to be going up.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, I mean, they have a really good offense. I mean, some days you're going to get yours, some days it's going to go to someone else. It's just it's the way of fantasy. Like I said,
Exactly.
I'm not going to hate on the pick, that's for sure. Because
No,
Dorner
me
does
neither. It's
put up
just,
numbers.
but we're going to tell you what you're going to get from the guy. He's going to get you 10 points, and he might get
Yes.
you 18 or 20 points. But
Right.
there's a, as they say, there's a safe floor there. It seems at this point of the season that, if you just need a guy that's going to, fill you with 10, go for it. But he does have, some potential to get more. Let's move to your pick. Um, Admittedly, you had one of the picks that wasn't on my list. Also, I'm aware of Katie Hutchinson, one of the WKU guys who started off really well, I think, in week 0. But you tell us the rest of the story there and why you picked him this week, Willie.
I picked him this week because let's see, I got him at the 18th spot. You guys picked yours all in the first 16 picks. So I
Mm-hmm.
really felt I might as well just go ahead and just wait. But I do like the matchup. Middle Tennessee State against wide receivers 123rd, but also they in the let's see in the country here they are 95th ranked. They've given up 24 passing touchdowns. That's what really stood out to me and why I wanted to take a chance on him. But let's say the last 2 weeks he's had 15.3 and then 15.8. And this is without having touchdowns. So why not take a chance on this guy of getting the 15, gets into the end zone, is going to get you the 22, which he's more than capable of. He had that 4 weeks ago. So he's 24% rostered. So, he's not, he's not like people like he's not rostered. So, and I think he should probably be over 30 by now,
Well, I think,
you know.
yeah, he's he's one of those guys that I bet you was over 30 a few weeks ago, and people have just been cutting him because they thought, okay, he's peaked, but it looks like he's making a little bit of a resurgence here, and they've got a different quarterback. Uh, the last couple of weeks, so maybe that's helped also. Maybe he's got a better chemistry and connection with that new quarterback. Yeah,
Well, I bet you that game against FIU is when people were cutting him when they lost 25-6 and he had his 7.2. So, and that was 3 weeks ago. So I can understand that, but he's had those two bounce back 15-point games. That's what I really.
yeah, yeah. And again, those new games are with a new quarterback throwing him the ball, I believe.
Hmm.
But I was going to say this before we leave. He's just playing against one of those teams that you want to play your guys against. We've got 3 or 4 of those this season that we've acknowledged like we do every year, but it seems like Middle Tennessee is definitely in that category of if you've got guys playing against them, put them in there.
Right.
All
Absolutely.
right. uh, then let's go to my pick here. The last receiver I took here. This is interesting. We've since these are second on the receiver list. These are the last 3 receivers here in a row that were taken. I actually got the last one off the board here with Nick Devereaux. One, I like his name. 2, I love, for the community, he's 1% rostered. 3, I love that Ball State is 112th and giving up points against receivers. Willie, maybe you can help me with Ball State's ranking there against in giving up passing yards. Um, and then I'll go through his points while you look that up.
They're
The last 3, huh? What are they?
they're 80.
80th. Yeah, and 112th in giving up points. How many touchdowns have they given up?
They've given up 15.
Right. So I didn't check that closely. I was relying again on Fantrax here with the 112 and his history these last 3 weeks of 22 points, 29 points, and 18 points with 5 touchdowns. That's going to be hard to maintain that level of scoring. But against Ball State, I'm all in. I'm all in for Nick Devereaux. Kim has been having a solid season. He hasn't been the worst. He hasn't been somebody we've targeted here in the waiver draft, but he's got a quarterback that's been putting up about 17 or 18 a game. And this is the guy he likes to get the ball to now. He's had uh, targets that have been increasing the last 3 weeks from 6 to 7 to 8. So he's become the go-to guy there. And I easily expect 15 points here for Devereaux this week, with the potential of, somewhere in the low to mid 20s. So I'm happy with him as the last receiver off the board.
Yeah, I'd picked him up in a few leagues. Want to say definitely our home league for sure. Like I say, the consistency there for him, and like the 5 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks is kind of crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember you mentioned him here a couple of weeks ago too. So yeah, you put your money where your mouth is. Um, Farnsworth pick, a guy that I think we talked about a few times on the Waiver Watch Draft here. Braden Pegan, uh, the underrated target there at Utah State. This is the other guy I was referencing when I said I think Farnsworth going all in. He is like, forget the fact of trying to give the most help to people this week. You guys have a limit of 30%. I'm finding guys that have been, productive and are rostered barely under 30%. Braden Pegan for Utah State's at 29%, going against UNLV, which doesn't sound too scary. I think they're kind of a middling, pass defense, not the best, not the worst. But he's averaging 16.9. He's one of those guys that, unlike, a lot of the guys I mentioned that, didn't do good early and have been coming along lately, he's just been steadily pumping out the games between 15 and 20 points. He's had 19.6 plus in 3 out of the last 5. His low is 9.7 in the last 5 weeks. What I took a note on there, because Farnsworth is always quick to mention this. The 9.7 he had last week in his 5-week low was against Nevada, and that was a 51-14 blowout. So, there's a little bit of rationale as to why his numbers went down this week, and he only got 9.7, and that's because they were in a blowout. UNLV should be a lot better competition. That game should be one of those really fun ones to watch. That's a shootout. I'd say go heavy on all those receivers and quarterbacks there from that Utah State UNLV game.
Yeah, UNLV is 123rd in the country. One thing is that they've given up 18 touchdowns, but they have 12 interceptions, which tells me that their DBs they do take chances. They're obviously ball hawks and things like that. So should be a fun one. Pegan might just go ahead and get into that end zone and give Farnsworth what he's looking for as far as those big plays.
Yep. And then let's see who he's got to do the job with him there at receiver. He's got Jason Platt from FAU. Admittedly, another one that wasn't on my list, but then when I took down his numbers and notes here, because Farnsworth took him, I was a little embarrassed that I skipped over him when I was making my list. Sounds like you've got some notes on him because you said, wow, what'd you have for him, Willie, for Jason Platt?
Well, he was number 2 on my list this week, so that's why I say the wow for that.
I don't know how I missed it.
They get Tulane. Tulane is not what they used to be, that's for sure. Let's see the notes on Tulane. They
120th against the receivers. That's a good start. 120 giving up points.
And 118th in passing defense. So they give up 260. Yeah. So he has back-to-back 20 plus point games. So 5 for 121 in the touchdown, and then 5 for 114 and a touchdown against Tulsa. So that's why I said wow.
No, you're right. Like I said, I was admitting that I was embarrassed that I missed him on my list this week when you said that. It's like, I don't know how. Maybe, I don't know. I can't say how. If I had looked up anything from the last 2 weeks, I should have found him. But it is what it is. Good pick by Farnsworth. We'll keep it moving. The matchup and the 2-week history there shows he's got the potential. I'll take a guy that again we're familiar with here on the waiver draft. Might make it to the all waiver team next week. We do one grand finale where we list the best players available to end the season under 30%. This could be one of the guys. Parker Kingston. You mentioned him several weeks ago in our off-the-record conversations. We picked him up in the Kings Classic. He's been steady. He's averaging 15.5 a game. So again, not a high ceiling guy, but very consistent with 16.6 and more in 4 of his last 5 games. So, another one that is just kind of shocking that he's stayed under 22%, especially with a quarterback that's really emerged there at BYU that, people can rely on to get him the ball.
Yeah, I mean, he had 9.9 last week, but that, obviously that was against Texas Tech. So they had a really, really tough game that week. But I do like the fact that he had his 10 targets. He still had his 10 targets. So, he's going to be on Bear Bachmeier's radar as far as, trying to get him that ball. And they need to win this week against TCU. So
Yeah, that
I
was a much
think,
tougher matchup last week.
yes, exactly. And then
Okay.
22%
So there, we've
rostered.
talked about.
So I think he'll be just fine. Yeah, go ahead and go on to mine if you want.
No, yeah, I was saying the same thing. Should have a much better matchup this week and bounce back. And that was really his only negative game in the last six, as far as I saw. So, Willie, finishing up your receivers, tell us about your pick here. Who'd you take as your
I took
second
Javen
receiver? Who,
Nicholas.
by the way,
Yeah,
was
was
yeah, your third round pick here. This is the third player you
okay.
took.
Yes, I got him in the number 10 spot. 25 points he had last week against ECU. He had 39.7 the week before against North Texas. But he's had 4 touchdowns in the last 2 games. Or yes, in the last 2 games, they get UTSA, who's given up 21 scores. Fantrax has them ranked 119th. They're actually ranked 114th in passing defense. They give up 251. Nicholas is just he's going to be consistent. You're going to get your 7 catches out of him, and he has that potential that to get 100 yards receiving, and obviously getting into the end zone. That's the most important thing right now, especially for that. Like I said, I think we talked about him as far as like kind of being that little joystick guy. 5'9", 180, just hard to get your hands on. So once you miss a couple of tackles, he's probably gone. So I can see that
Right.
happening against
Yeah, the match.
UTSA.
Right. Yeah, and I had him on my list. He was one of the top guys that I would have targeted this week. You actually, I took a receiver first. I was hoping to get him as potentially a second receiver, but it went running back just to make sure I got a good one there too. But again, he's hitting all the marks, even though he plays for Charlotte. Don't worry about that. He's playing UTSA. They give up yards. Uh, the fact that he had 40 weeks ago, you've got a great ceiling, great big play potential, like Willie said. So and he's under 10%. So for this part of the season, when you might need an emergency guy for your playoffs or playoff run, there you go. Willie, let's look at Justice's last pick, another familiar one. He's very similar to Parker Kingston here in the sense that he's been on here several weeks. It'll really be interesting to see if he makes kind of the all waiver team next week and stays under 30. Um, I mentioned him as far as one of the guys from last week that put up his numbers, and we've been shocked. Has stayed under 30. Took his quarterback forever. We kind of said it all in the opening when we recapped last week for him, but he's got another great matchup, is all we could add, against Sam Houston, who is 132nd and giving up fantasy points to receivers. He's had over 17 in 7 of his 9 games this season, so he is Mr. Consistency as far as the receivers. The only thing he lacks is the really big game potential, but sometimes it's better to have that guy who's going to definitely get you 15 or 17 instead of hoping the guy can get you 30. I think you agree with that philosophy, right, Willie?
No, absolutely. He was number 2 on my list this week. Sam Houston is 127th in the country. Fantrax has him as 132nd against wide receivers, so he should definitely get his this week. And if you have him and Minicucci, start them both.
Right, right. So, all right, let's do a little different. Let's go back to Farnsworth here. We'll stop snaking it. Let's just see who
All right.
Farnsworth, let's unveil who Farnsworth took as one of his running backs, and that is Xavier Robinson from Oklahoma. He was taken as Farnsworth's last pick along with the tight
Yep.
end, right?
Yep.
Yep. I know you and I have had him, but we picked him up in King's Classic a couple weeks ago, and we knew when we grabbed him he might just play 1 week for us because the matchups were pretty tough going against Alabama this week and another tough SEC opponent next week. But we know Farnsworth, like ourselves, is an Oklahoma guy. He's believing in the home team running back, who has certainly, without a doubt, proven to be the running back one there. But before I get into his stats, what do you think? Is Alabama is it a good pick going against Alabama, Willie? What's the counter to that?
Well, I guess you could look at it this way. If I mean, luckily, the good thing is that they had to buy, gives Mateer one more week to get that thumb together. Um, but they may have to just lean on the run game. So, and this is the one guy who's proven that he can actually get it done. The others not so much. I mean, the last 2 weeks he's had over 100 yards in each of those last two games. He's getting into the end zone. Plenty. They're not gonna, hopefully they're not crazy enough to be running Mateer, inside the five. But um, I can't fault the pick. He was the last running back I had on my list. I went ahead and put 9 on there. I mean, so he did make my list, so I understand it. But if they're going to beat Alabama, they're definitely going to have to run. They're not going to be able to sit there and let Mateer, try to throw it 30, 40 times and try to win.
Yeah, and Alabama, in terms of giving up points to fantasy running backs, hasn't been all world. They're 59th, so they're really as squarely in the middle of the pack as you can get. So it isn't something that you should be overly fearful of if he's one of your options to play this week if you've already got him on your roster. And again, if he's one of the guys that is available at less than 10% rostered, don't be afraid to pick him up if you've got a guy that's been averaging 8 or 10 points, because he's a guy that can get you 15 or 18, and he's had 4 touchdowns in the last 3 weeks, so we know they're going to use him in scoring situations. So
Yeah, and they've
that's a
given
good
up
defense.
11.
I think,
Yeah,
yeah. So they're, and again, right in the middle of the pack in terms of giving up points to fantasy running back. So not as scary as you might think. All right, we'll move on to my pick. I would say I would describe the situation very similarly to what we just described for Farnsworth. I took Caleb Komalafi from
come on.
Northwestern. Got to see him play a little bit in live action. Loved what I saw. Really shifty guy. He's got enough power. He's got a lot of speed. Looks like a great athlete. He's going against Michigan, which at first glance, similar to Robinson versus Alabama, seems scary. But instead of looking at Michigan being 50th and giving up points to fantasy running backs, I'm looking at it like, okay, they're only 50th. Like, there's an opportunity here for a guy who's been emerging. He's had 14.8 on the season, but he's had 15 plus points in 5 of his last 6 games. So I know they're going to be slightly overmatched, or maybe quite a bit overmatched, but they've got to try to do something, and he's going to get his carries. He had 17 carries in each of the last 2 games. That's netted in 25 and 27 points. So this is one of those guys that just has, you knew nothing about when the season started, that has clearly become a go-to guy for Northwestern, and they've looked a lot better these last couple of weeks as a result of that. So, very similar to Robinson, though, in the sense that you might be scared at first glance of the matchup, but I think, if he's a guy you can grab. We've got more that we'll reveal that we think are better, but he's a guy that you should take if he's available, and none of these other guys are.
Yeah, but he is one of the ones that I left off the list only because of the matchup. So I'm not gonna
Right.
lie, I
Yeah, a little
was a little
tougher.
bit, I was a little scared of the matchup, so that's why I didn't put him on the list. But a guy I
Yep,
did
yep,
get five
understandable,
spots.
but and it's all,
Go ahead.
it is one of those situations. You've just got to compare it to who you've got on your roster and know that, like we're admitting, it's not the best matchup, but there's an opportunity here if you've got a guy that just has been underperforming or has been hurt. Like if you got Isaac Brown from Louisville and you couldn't get his backup, this is the guy you can plug in and grab, because you need him.
Yeah, yeah. And like I say, you
All
you
right.
you you were high
Let's
on
speak
him. You,
on
you took him ninth
Mr.
overall.
Minnesota here.
Yeah, you took him ninth overall, and then
What's that?
5 picks. You took Komalafi ninth overall, and then 5 spots later is when I got Steve Chavez Soto, which the guy that you've
Right.
been taking like the last two or 3 weeks. So and the crazy part is that so let's change that roster percentage because I had him at 15 when I took him, so maybe that just didn't get
Okay.
updated. Um, so
Yeah, I might have carried that over. Willie,
okay,
that makes sense. This is the guy that I must have accidentally deleted when I copied and pasted my notes from last week, or I carried whatever. That 8% was his last week number, and this is the guy that I would have taken instead of Komalafi had I
okay,
copied and pasted my notes correctly. So this is
wow,
the one I gave you, I think.
okay,
Yeah,
yes.
big
Uh,
mistake on my
yeah.
part, because I do think
Eh,
this is a much better pick than mine.
Yeah, and I think you talked about it. I mean, he's definitely their goal line guy. He's had, five rushing touchdowns the last three games. He's coming off a 10.9 against the Air Force, so we were really happy that he did get into the end zone to kind of, because we needed every point we can get there in Kings. Um, so I do like the Nevada matchup a little bit better. So Fantrax has him ranked 119th. Let's see. They are 81st, but they've given up 18 rushing touchdowns. That's what I really liked about him and was happy um, to get him where I got him. I had him. He was my third back after Thevenin, and then the guy that I took third overall. We'll see that a little bit later. But 18 rushing touchdowns they've given up. That's what I really wanted out of those the two backs that I did get.
Yeah. And yeah, I want to mention a fun fact based on him and King Classic, but I'm going to save it for later. Let's reveal a few more of these picks before I do that. Let's see who Justin grabbed with his last running back. He actually let's do the big reveal here two at a time. Let's go because he took these guys back to back and he made them quickly. So he grabbed the guy who is replacing Isaac Brown at Louisville, which is Kewan Brown and Antoine Roberts. He had the turn
Fourth and
there
fifth.
with his first round pick and his second round pick, the only snake
Hmm.
picks that we make. So we're not sure if he had a preferred order here, but he grabbed them both back to back. So they were essentially made in the same slot. Kewan Brown is the guy that's been the replacement for Isaac Brown when he's been injured, which now seems to be long term. Watson is back for Louisville, but that doesn't seem to be slowing him down. He was a guy I definitely had on my list. He's warranted as a first round waiver pick here by Justice. 24% rostered might be a little tougher to get your hands on. Going against Clemson, which on paper looks similar to the matchups that we talked about with Komalafi and Robinson, kind of a traditional, stronger defense that he's going against, but they're not as strong as they used to be. I don't think you need to be too scared that Clemson is 55th in giving up points to running backs. They've got enough holes in that defense that he can still make something out of it. But he's also had a good 3 week string here since Isaac Brown has been out. He's had 20, 22-6, and 15-1. Watson again has taken some of those carries, so he's still splitting the role there, but should get you the 15 that you need for this week. Any thoughts on Brown there before we move on to his other pick with Roberts?
Yeah, it was a little scarier pick for me. I mean, Clemson, I understand, what they are, but they're still ranked 19th in rushing. So that's what deterred me
Ah,
from putting them on this week. So they only give up 106 yards on the ground. So that was one of the things that I said no to.
right. How many TDs? Because since they're not like top 20 in Fantrax giving up points to running backs. So how many TDs have they given up?
9.
9. I'm not sure where these running backs are getting points against them. Maybe their running backs are getting a lot of catches because that does make it sound like a tougher matchup than I thought. But nonetheless, he's going to get his carries. So there you go, another option if it's tough for you. The other guys, exact same scenario. Antoine Roberts has taken over at Marshall as the RB1 after Michael Allen, who was producing really well, went down with an injury. Marshall's been pretty silent about what's going on there. It was a surprise when he wasn't available 3 or 4 weeks ago for that first game that he missed. Um, there's not really a clear indication of if Allen's coming back anytime soon, but in his absence, Antoine Roberts has definitely made the most of things. He's been plugged in right where Allen left off and or producing right where Allen left off. 12 points, 14 points, 16 points, and 18 points. So he's actually getting progressively better each week. And you got to love the matchup. I would say this, even if Allen is back and there's a little bit of a split carry situation with Roberts, and I'm not saying I know if he is or not, but even if Allen does make it back, that Georgia State defense should be soft enough for them both to eat, even along with the quarterback, who we know their quarterback's going to run there at Marshall too. But yeah, how many yards per game is Georgia State giving up per week, Willie, or per game?
Let's see, Georgia State. I was looking at Marshall's actually. They are 134th. They've given up 27 rushing touchdowns, and
Yeah.
they give up
So there you go.
218 on the ground.
Right. And this is a guy that is 2% rostered. So when you're talking about guys that could really help in a pinch, this is probably, I would say, one of the better picks on our entire board from all the teams. We're going to reveal, everybody else's number one running back that they took, which we can start now with you, Willie. Let's see who you've got to compare to that. Damon Bankston, tell us about him.
Damon Bankston, man, this is just one of those other ones that I really love the matchup. They got Colorado State, who's also giving up about 195 yards on the ground, also giving up 18 rushing touchdowns. Bankston, he just gets his. He's steady. Um, he had the one bad week against Nevada 3 weeks ago, where they only gave him 6 carries for some odd reason, but comes back against Utah State with 15 and a half, and then against UNLV in that blowout win, he had 30. What I do like is that he's not getting a ton of carries, but they are giving it to him out of the backfield. He had 5 receptions for 122 yards and 2 scores against UNLV. That's what I really like about him, is having that dual threat. He can either way they get him the ball, he can get it done. Against Utah State the week before, he didn't have his receptions. Then he had his 13 carries for 84 and a score. So they just figure out ways to get him the ball. Against Colorado State, he should probably be able to do both. So I really like the matchup, is what it was.
Let's get into my first running back that I liked, which is another guy that's a repeat, who is, a new discovery towards the end of the year here for us. Clay Thevenin, mentioned his numbers from last week. He's had back-to-back weeks where he's surprisingly performed coming out of nowhere. Last 3 weeks, 15 points, 36, and 26. He's not getting a ton of carries, but he's very efficient, making the most of the ones he does. He's getting 10 to 12 carries a game. We pointed out last week when we took him, though, he's getting those extra 3 to 4 catches, which in most leagues is going to be 3 to 4 extra points. So the fact that he's scoring touchdowns, getting in the end zone, and he's getting catches makes up for the only 10 or 11 or 12 carries he's getting a game. They're playing a team that's probably a little tougher than their typical Conference USA opponent. They're going against Washington State this week. So there's little tiny bit of hesitancy there, but I think, he's become a little bit more of a go-to option for him, and he'll still get his against Washington State, but just maybe not as much as he's done the last 2 weeks when he's had the really big games of 36 and 26. But I don't think it's a stretch to expect the 15 points again from him this week.
No, I agree. I like that. I did like him. He was number one. That's what I think that one was a steal. You did get him early though, so I can't complain
I
there.
think I took him. Where is
Seventh,
he? 7th overall.
yes.
Yeah, which was funny. He was still the 1, 2, 3, 4. He was still the 5th running back overall, because your guy you took with your first pick, um, and then we had Kewan Brown and Antoine Roberts go right after that.
Hmm.
So we had a lot of running backs go really early, which is a testament to what we've been saying the last few weeks. Those seem to be the hardest guys to pick up, where the good guys remaining under 30% are just a lot slimmer than some of the other positions.
Yeah, I thought I would be able to grab Devenham second, but yeah, you took him. I just like Bankston's matchup a little bit better. That was all.
Yeah. Well, while we're on Thevenin, I'm going to take a quick pause here to point out I thought this was interesting. I don't know if you had seen this, Willie. We've, out of our starting lineup in Kings Classic, which we are now officially in the playoffs in, to show you that we really follow what we're saying here with the waiver watch. In our starting lineup for the first week of the playoffs in the Kings Classic, among all the experts there, we're starting Thevenin at running back, Duplessis at wide receiver, Kingston at wide receiver, and Steven Chavez Soto in one of our flex spots. So nearly half of our team that is starting this week are guys that are under 30% to this day. Not to mention, Fignano at quarterback and Alonzo Barnett, who both just went over the 30% mark like a week and a half ago. So, 80% of our roster are guys that have been on the waiver watch most of the season, which I thought was pretty interesting when I was looking at that. I don't
Right.
know if that caught your attention or not, or if you had
It
noticed
did.
that.
I mean, and we talked about it maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago as far as like overhauling your roster when needed. And I want to say that Jared posted in one of our chats that you know, he felt like, he probably should have been doing that a little bit earlier, but I think he ran out of cash or something like that, and so he wasn't able to get his pickups. So, don't be afraid to, not spend those budgets early and wait a little bit longer, and then you can overhaul your roster when you need to late in the season due to injury or just, uh, lack of production. So,
Yeah, there's different philosophies there, but I think you and I both lean towards the side of, look, if it's week 1 or 2 and you lack the confidence in the players you drafted to the point that you got to go spend more than half of your free agent bucks in weeks 1 or 2, what'd you draft guys for then? Why did you draft those guys that you're replacing? Unless there was some kind of ACL tear or, some weird random injury that took out a major star that, you're going to be missing. But we've just both had the philosophy that, you're 10 days removed or 2 weeks removed from a draft. What could have changed that you're now going to go spend a ton of money on a guy that was available in your draft that you didn't take?
hmm right, right.
Save those dollars. We're not saying be cheap when you do start to spend, but like there's no reason to go spend 50% of your budget in weeks 1 or 2, in our opinion. Others may disagree. All right, well, let's wrap this thing up, get through Farnsworth's last running back, and then go through the quarterbacks. He had the first pick in the draft, and this is the guy he selected. The running backs we told you went quick. He took Jordan Gant, who I mentioned from last week was one of Justice's picks that helped him get to the 127 points. I was a little skeptical of him last week because of his inconsistencies. He's only averaged 13-1 for the season, but he's the guy that's got that big play ability. He's had 3 games over 27 points. And what's changed in the last couple of weeks is his volume. He's gone, from a guy getting a decent amount of carries to getting a huge amount of carries. He's had 25 and 28 carries the last couple of weeks. And he's got a matchup that's very similar to last week's, where he's going against Kent State. Last week, we saw what he did against UMass. With the additional carries now that he's getting, can't blame Farnsworth here for taking Gant as the first player off the board in this week's draft. What do you think, Willie?
No, I can't either. I mean, like I said, Farnsworth is he's just going for it. So why not get guys that have been on the list multiple times and you know that they're still producing? So I don't fault any of his thinking as far as taking these guys with these higher percentages that are barely just on the waiver watch.
Right. And with that, we'll get into the quarterbacks. I have to say, a lot of the quarterbacks, I've been saying each week, I've got more than enough quarterbacks. This week was a little bit different. I had far fewer quarterbacks that I was really confident in than I'd had in weeks past. A lot of those guys we've been taking week in and week out have made it over the 30% mark. Did you notice the same thing, and do you feel the same way, Willie? Was it a little bit slimmer, in your opinion, at quarterback?
Yes, and also the reason why I took mine early. There were a couple names that, obviously the ones that we're going to see, but yeah, it was a little slim, and once the first two were gone, I really didn't want to take chances on the last four that I had on my list.
Yeah, so let's see who we all ended up with, and we'll start with Farnsworth here. He took Rodney Tisdale from Western Kentucky. We had a discussion a little bit earlier about Western Kentucky facing Middle Tennessee, a defense that's almost in that must-play against category. And Rodney Tisdale is that quarterback that I mentioned has been the new starter the last couple of weeks, throwing the ball to Katie Hutchinson. The stats, as far as how those line up, is the one guy I didn't put any down on, Willie. Do you happen to have his numbers for the last couple of weeks? Because he wasn't on
Yeah,
my
so
initial list, and
yeah,
so I was a little bit surprised. But go ahead, tell us what he's done.
yeah, last 2 weeks against La Tech, they won 28-24. He had 20.4. 61%, or actually 62% completion at 227 yards and a score. He does rush the ball, which I do. He's a dual threat guy. So he's had 12 carries in the last 2 weeks. So against New Mexico State last week, he had 30.8. So he's coming on. So he was 30 of 38 for 301 yards and four passing touchdowns last week against New
Right.
Mexico State.
And from what you can tell, does it look like those are the only two games he started, or did he have any significant stats in a couple of weeks prior?
No, it looks like some spot duty early on, but yeah, these last 2 weeks are the ones that he's been starting.
Right. Again, for you, good news in the sense that those are the 2 weeks where Katie Hutchinson has been coming along once this new quarterback has come onto the scene.
Right.
Good thing for people looking for a quarterback is since he is a new starter and has just played these last couple of weeks, his percentage is super low. Farnsworth sort of makes up for those high-end picks, those guys in the high 20s, by giving you a quarterback here who hasn't been mentioned all season long because he's a brand new starter and is only on 3% of rosters. So nice way to finish it out there. It was his second pick, by the way. He went ahead and went Gant and then immediately grabbed Tisdale. So that shows you that he's thinking pretty highly of Tisdale as well. So and as my quarterback, I went back to the well. I went back to J.C. French. Uh, I've really liked him. He's one of the few guys I could say that we targeted that we didn't get our hands on in the Kings Classic, as far as guys who have kind of emerged and developed here mid-season that we felt really good about. But hey, that's fine. We've got some good ones anyways. I don't know that we're going to need him, but if you do have him, you're in a fortunate situation. We mentioned last week his last four games were all against opponents that were like 88th or worse and giving up points. We're down to now his last three games. Every single opponent he's playing is ranked 90th or worst against fantasy quarterbacks. Coastal Carolina is the team that's 90th, but the next 2 weeks are even better. He's averaging 22.1, but he's had 32, 35, and 26.6 in the last three. I think I had something wrong in my notes there. What do you have last week, Willie? Do you have him?
Yeah, I just moved him. I think it was
I
38.
can check.
Let's see here. Now he had 25-9. Yeah.
You're looking at a guy who's low. I think the last 4 weeks is the 25-9, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And you know the next 3 weeks should be just as good. There's no reason to think he won't have 25 points each of these last 3 weeks. So we'll leave it at that. And surprisingly, just 16% rostered still.
Yeah, and another dual threat guy. I mean, he's going to get his 12 carries, and
Yep.
he's gotten into the end zone with his legs the past four games. So,
Yep.
he's just going to get you two to four touchdowns every week.
Yeah, and I think they've got Marshall next week, as a matter of fact. So there you go. If you want to grab a guy that can maybe get you through 2 weeks of playoffs or get you into the playoffs and have a good first round, that's a good one. Willie, let's see who you grabbed at quarterback. Tell us about J.C. French's opponent this week, Samari Collier.
Well, we talked about him earlier, from last week.
Yep.
I mean, you know what he's going to do. 20.1, 29.8, 35.3, and then 35.1. That's just who he is. They get, Georgia Southern's defense isn't all that great. Fantrax has him 109th. Let's see, for 102nd in the country. They give up 241. They haven't given up a whole lot of passing touchdowns, but with Collier, he's just proven himself that he's just going to get it. Yeah, he's also a dual threat guy. And not only he can give you 20 carries. That's what I like about him.
Yep.
2 weeks ago, he had 22 for 75 and two rushing touchdowns. Back that up this past week with 10 for 123 and a score. And then he also threw for three more. This is going to be a game to watch, in my opinion.
Yeah, let's see.
Maybe 90 points.
Right. Can you tell what day of the week that is? I don't have that up.
That is Saturday.
For that?
Saturday, 5:00.
That's too bad. That would have been a great Sun Belt, Fun Belt midweek game. But oh well, you can't put them on every weekday. So yeah, go grab you one of those guys in that Georgia Southern Coastal game. You can't go wrong. And those are both guys that were in there last week that performed well. And Willie's guy was the first.
This might be one of the last weeks to start him because they have South Carolina next week and then JMU the week after.
Right.
But if you can, I wouldn't be afraid to put him in and hopes that you can get into the next round.
Right. Exactly. All right, let's close it out with Justice's quarterback pick. It's UTEP's quarterback Skylar Locklear, who had a fantastic week this week to follow up, previous back-to-back good weeks. He's had 34, 22, and 38 in his last three. He's a guy that's tinkered with big games in the past. He's been around a couple of years here in fantasy football. Has been one of those middling quarterbacks that you feel like is good about getting 16 to 18 points, but probably not much more on a consistent basis. But he has had the kind of the sporadic big games that gave you hope. And what we love to see now from Justice's quarterback is he's done it 3 weeks in a row, and he's going against Missouri State. Um, might sound like a little bit easier matchup than it really is. Missouri State's been pretty solid this year, better than probably anybody expected in their debut FBS season. They're 58th in giving up points against quarterbacks. But again, Locklear's on a roll with UTEP. It's going to be a competitive game. Neither team should blow out the other, so you're going to see everybody kind of at full strength the entire game, battling in a tough one. So I like a quarterback in that situation where he's going to have to basically just fight it out the entire game. I wouldn't say this one's in line for a shootout, but it's going to be a really good competitive game where both quarterbacks, or both teams will have to be giving it their all the entire time. What do you think, Willie?
Yeah, Locklear it sounds like a broken record, but I mean, these dual threat guys. He's had 53 carries in the last three games and four rushing touchdowns to boot, to go with his six passing scores and the last three games. You just want the guys who can do both things. They may steal from running backs, but in this kind of competition, that's what you want. So it is what it is. And Locklear has proven these last few games that, he's going to get it done. And I'd say he's averaging, 28 points a game the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, he's doing great. And again, he's got a competitive matchup. I heard one of our guests use that term earlier this season. That's what you want more than anything is a competitive matchup. You don't always want the blowout. You want the guys that are going to be having to go series for series and try to match the other team every time they get on the field. But we've gone a little bit long. We had, we were used to doing this with three teams. We had four here to work our way through. Hate the guys can't be here. This is the guest finals. Both of our guys, I think, had 100 points in both of their games this year.
Yep, they
so
did.
We know they know exactly what they're talking about. Your guys, me and Willie, your hosts, we're on a roll. We're sitting there looking at back-to-back 100-point weeks, and me nearly getting there this week with 94. We think we've got some helpful insight here. We know a lot of you, it's too late. You're out of it. Sorry. Maybe there's some young guys here you can pick up in a dynasty league, if nothing else, and it helps you that way. Not too much time here for leftovers, but I will add, Willie, Jeff Sims from Arizona State was one of the quarterbacks I was surprised wasn't picked. Levitt's out. They're playing West Virginia this week, but also have Colorado next week. So I would say, Jeff Sims, who I believe is still around 1 or 2%, is a guy that you might be able to go grab if you're in a pinch and none of these other guys are there. I'll leave it at that since we did have four teams full of other guys to mention. But you have one or two you want to mention before we get out of here, Willie?
No, I know we wanted to mention the averages and stuff like that before we headed
Right.
out.
Oh yeah, I was talking about how good we've done. Let's so what's the your average for the season and mine and our cumulative average, and then our guess, because I know we shoot for 90. We always talk about 90. So I guess start with the entire group. What us and
Yes.
our entire group.
Yeah. So the entire group, we're at 90.1,
Exactly where we want to be.
Yeah, we were at 90.3 last year. So we're right where we want to be. You and I combined, we are 92.6. Our guest pickers are 86.7.
Nice. And I think
You
last year
actually,
was slightly inverted.
yes, and then you're at 88.4, which is up from 83.1 from last year. So,
Right.
you having these top five finishes, that sure helped.
Right. Yeah. Prior to the good thing is I've had 3 weeks in a row where I've bounced back. I had the top three 3 weeks ago, number 1 last week, and 94, which is certainly acceptable by our standards. So I'm happy with the last 3 weeks because I had a pretty slow start where I was averaging in the mid 70s there, which is decent at best. Not even quite good, but decent.
Yeah, which
But
I'm hoping for 100 this week because I'm trying to get your all time, which is 96.4, which you did in 2023. So I'm sitting
nice.
here right now at 96.8.
Okay, so good luck. I want everybody to do good because our point in doing this is to help everyone. We love to brag when we win, but again, all 4 of us are here to provide help. The 2 that joined us this week in the finals, Farnsworth and Justice, are certainly capable of that. So we wish everybody luck. Here's to hoping we all have at least 100 points this week. That'll be something we might have never done as far as in a 4-person race. We'll have to look at that as we give a recap next week to see if we've ever had a foursome that's all gone over 100. But that's it for me, Willie. Take us on out of here.
Yep. Thank you guys for watching, listening, and good luck this week.